Hi, and welcome to Experience Points by University XP. On Experience Points, we explore different ways we can learn from games. I'm your host, Dave Eng from Games Based Learning by University XP. Find out more by going to universityxp.com. On today's episode, we'll learn from Thorsten Kodalle. Thorsten Kodalle is the head of Innovation Laboratory at the Bundeswehr Command and Staff College. He is a leading expert in strategic wargaming, gamification, and serious games. As a lecturer and scrum master, he pioneers projects like global wargaming with cyber warfare and gamifying strategic thinking. Thorsten is passionate about lifelong learning and serves as an ambassador for the Khan Academy, advocating for blended learning. With over 10 years at the military academy, he continues to shape the future of military education. Thorsten, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be on your podcast. Thank you very much for having me, Dave.
Great. I'm glad to have you here, Thorsten. So I think that your background is incredibly interesting. And specifically, I wanted to learn a little bit more about gamification and strategic thinking. So can you share some insights into your role as the head of the Innovation Laboratory at the Bundeswehr Command and Staff College and how you integrate gamification into strategic thinking?
Yeah, well, thank you very much for the question. I actually run a seminar, Gamification of Strategic Thinking, with a civilian university and part of our German armed forces. So the idea was that within this seminar, I try to teach basic tools of strategy development, like, for example, the SWOT analysis, like strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which is a kind of fundamental and very basic tool for developing strategies. And I try to make this more accessible by actually playing one of the best strategies available. So I came along and played Scythe, the board game, and I integrated that as the heart of my gamification of strategic thinking seminar. So I have a seminar with, for example, 25 people, and these will be divided into 5 teams with 5 people each, and they will now game against each other in this specific world of Scythe, where we have different actors who are playing on the strategic level, actually. And this is an alternative timeline, and they need to think about military actions and economic actions and information actions. So this is actually something that is on the strategic level. DIME is one of the most popular acronyms, where you need to deal with diplomacy, information, military, and economics. So soft power and hard power. And this game was, of course, created just for fun. It's a recreational war game. And I put it as the main engine of the seminar. And the players, the students, need to play the game. And because the game is so much fun, there's a very high intrinsic motivation actually to put extra time into the studies. So they game a lot. They actually have fun developing SWOT. Sorry. SWOT analysis for all the different actors, and then see how this actually plays out in a tournament at the end of the seminar. So that is my way to integrate, in this case, a full game into a seminar. And as a kind of layer, a gamification layer, we also add this competition between the teams and the tournament at the end.
I see. All right. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate the response. I think as someone that plays a lot of board games in general, Scythe is, I have to say, one of my favorite games, even though it's not one of the games I play often. Can you share a little bit more about why you determined to select Scythe as a particular game that you were going to focus on? Why not any other games? Was there a particular reason?
Well, actually, when I played Scythe for the very first time, my first idea was I need to build a seminar around this game.
Oh yeah.
I was so thrilled by the depth
Hmm.
the game is actually providing on the
Hmm.
strategic level for the player. And it is also, in a way, short. You can play it in 2 to 3 hours.
Uh-huh.
It's not like Twilight Imperium, where you
Hmm.
need 8 hours or more.
Hmm.
And I am, or today, I would also consider another game
Hmm.
like Terraforming Mars. If I
Uh-huh.
want to do more into business wargaming,
Hmm.
I think Terraforming Mars would be an excellent game to teach people business wargaming and also make them they need to develop SWOT analysis and can do a really in-depth analysis of the environment,
Hmm.
terraforming Mars, and develop contingency strategies or business continuity plans
Uh-huh.
if the initial plan just fails, which it will probably do. Like planning, the plan is nothing, but planning is everything, like President
Hmm.
Eisenhower said.
Right. Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes that I often cite on a regular basis that I believe the actual quotes are plans are useless, but the act of planning is invaluable. Do you remember that?
Yeah. That's more to the real quote.
All right. All right. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate that. Again, I think your background is incredibly unique, and I want to talk a little bit more about strategic wargaming. So I know when I read your bio, you also serve as a lecturer in strategic wargaming at the Bundeswehr Command and Staff College. Can you share with us how you see the intersection of strategic wargaming influencing military strategy overall? I'd like to get your input on that.
Yeah, well, of course. Now I have to quote Clausewitz: "War is the continuation of policy with other means, and policy can be understood as a kind of umbrella for all domains of power projection
Hmm.
of a national state." And DIME would be the appropriate acronym:
Hmm.
diplomacy, information, military, economics. And
Uh-huh.
military is, of course, only a part of the
Yeah.
acronym. But diplomacy information is considered to be the soft power,
Hmm.
and military and economics is the hard power.
Hmm.
And if you see the connection between the strategic level that
Hmm.
has to deal with all of these domains and the military level, of course, you see the military level, there is the danger that it is very enclosed and only looking at its own domain.
Hmm.
I think Doctor Strangelove is a good movie
Hmm.
about this topic, about how military personnel are very keen on deploying nuclear weapons,
Hmm.
and the politicians are very afraid of it. And Thomas Schelling, one of the best strategists of the 20th century,
Hmm.
did in a way war game this Armageddon. He was a kind of leading theorist in game theory on the deterrence in nuclear warfare.
Right.
And of course, you need to have this strategic level and the big picture, and
Hmm.
not only the limited military view. For example, in our German history, in the First World War, we had a very small focus on the military domain,
Hmm.
and the Weimar Republic learned from this experience because,
Hmm.
as you know, the First World War did go terribly wrong for all of Europe, but
Hmm.
for Germany in particular.
Hmm.
And the Weimar Republic was actually very good on strategic wargaming. So they looked at all the other domains and were very good in diplomacy.
Hmm.
But as as luck would have it, the Weimar Republic did not prevail, and the Third Reich stepped back into the old mistakes and had a very narrow view on military strategy only. And therefore, uh, I think politicians are very well advised to have this big picture
Mhm.
and do not let only military personnel try to decide the fate of a country.
I see. All right. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate that.
And
Oh, go ahead.
may I add something
Yeah,
additional? Something
of course.
um, on the other side, there is also another connection, also a historic example. The CIA played war games in
Hmm.
1962 about the success of military campaigns in Vietnam.
Mm.
And the sponsor of these war games was the political level.
Oh.
And the interesting thing is that the military, the CIA experts, and the red teaming cell in the strategic war game
Hmm.
was very accurate on how they viewed how this war would play out. The political assumption was that an air campaign would be sufficient. The military expert played a war game, and
Uh-huh.
they came up with the conclusion that an air campaign only wouldn't have the success that was anticipated from the political level. But this was something that the political level didn't want to hear.
I see.
So they disregarded the results of this war game, and that was one of the slipping slopes into the Vietnam War. And there's actually a book about it, Lessons in Disaster.
All right. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate it. I think that that was actually a segue into one of the follow-up questions I had. I think that DIME as an acronym is incredibly useful for, I think, understanding a lot of the different and often complicated facets of strategic wargaming. Again, just to make sure that I have it correctly, DIME stands for diplomacy, information, military, and economics. I'm thinking, do you believe that culture has any role to play in a consideration in addition to those other four, diplomacy, information, military, and economics, like the culture for the nation states or the peoples involved?
I think most definitely,
Hmm.
if you want to be successful in diplomacy and probably also in the information realm and
Uh-huh.
the economic realms, you need to understand the other players and actors. You have to
Uh-huh.
kind of have this intercultural competency, this
Hmm.
skill set, how to read other people, how to understand them, and from the military perspective. John Boyd developed the ODA loop,
Hmm.
observe, orient, decide, act,
Yep.
which is a very brief abbreviation of the military decision cycle.
Hmm.
But he had a very, very in-depth um, view on this ODA loop. And it could be actually considered to be the scientific approach to strategy development. And in the orientation phase, one of the things he had took a close look at was culture, but
Hmm.
also genetics, a lot of environmental factors. So that was a very, very broad consideration of important factors. And culture is, of course, one of the most important factors. And as you, of course, probably know, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
That's great. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate that. I want to take some time to jump into our last question here, which is specifically on serious game design, because I think you have a lot of insight to offer here. But specifically, I wanted to focus on the realm of game design and development. So, how do you balance the popular entertainment, quote unquote, aspect of games with the educational goals of serious games?
Yeah, that is actually a very, very good question. And it is always a balance and a kind of trade-off. I really try to create a game
Hmm.
that also provides intrinsic motivation to play it. I recently took part in the wargaming designer course at the US Army War College.
Hmm.
That was an awesome experience, great course. And they also focused on the problem to keep players engaged in the game. A serious game, of course, is not designed to be fun
Hmm.
as such. or has fun as the main purpose of the game, but is of course not forbidden to have
Mm-hmm.
fun. So you can integrate fun into the game
Mm-hmm.
and still focus very much on the educational goals. And the very first question you always need to ask if you try to apply a game, actually any game, what is the purpose of the game? What do you want to achieve also as an educational goal?
Mm-hmm.
For example, my blackout simulation Neustart. It's not actually my blackout simulation. I didn't develop it,
Mm-hmm.
but I implement it and I use it several times. In the last week, we played it 3 times. In the week before, also 2 times. It's an awesome tool for team building,
Mm-hmm.
for 21st century skills, for collaboration and
Mm-hmm.
communication. So if you just want to train these parts, you can just play this game. But on a content level, it
Mm-hmm.
also provides a lot of awareness concerning crisis management,
Mm-hmm.
for attacks on critical infrastructure and preparedness. Like what should I do to be prepared for such a worst case scenario? So fortune favors the prepared mind,
Mm-hmm.
and playing this game will provide you with a lot of insights into your own preparedness on the content level. And on the level of the game mechanics,
Mm-hmm.
it keeps all of the players engaged all of the time. There's almost no downtime. You are always thinking and discussing and communicating with all the others. You can make this very serious with time pressure, and the game was actually designed for crisis management teams
Mm-hmm.
as a training tool. So if you use such a tool or you want to design such a tool, you can try to design it that it is possible to achieve different educational goals. I would argue that if you play Gloomhaven,
Mm-hmm.
this is a perfect team building tool for cooperation. It is not a war game. It is not a serious game. It is just for fun.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to train collaboration and communication, such a recreational war game, a dungeon crawler is a very good game. But it is of course not designed for this. But it could be used for that. If you also want to achieve a specific goal concerning the actual content
Mm-hmm.
of a game, you usually end up with these serious games that actually have a serious content and are not really designed for fun. For example, this War of Mine, which is a
Mm-hmm.
computer game, is also available as a board game.
Mm-hmm.
And on the on the board game, there is mentioning this is R-rated, and you have to deal with death and grief.
Mm-hmm.
So this is by definition a very, very serious game, and it's probably not fun really to play it. If you played this War of Mine, there's a lot of dying,
Right.
and but the game was designed to deliver this feeling. If you play a refugee in a war zone,
Mm-hmm.
and you just need to try to survive, and you just experience how difficult it is, and you will eventually probably die. So this
Right.
is not a good gaming experience if you are just out for fun.
Right.
So it is always the question, what do you want to achieve? And then
Mm-hmm.
you can, of course, try this and implement this with specific game mechanics. But it is a small line, and it is sometimes crossed in the wrong onto the wrong side.
Right. Right. Thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate that. I have not been able to play this War of Mine. It came onto my radar initially as a board game. I know that there's a digital version of it, but I have not played it yet. But often I share the same disclaimer that you shared with us right now, which is that it's very serious content. It's not something it is designed as a commercial game, but it also has a lot of mature themes. But my follow-up and something I think is interesting is that cyber card game that you mentioned before. I know that you adapted it, but is it available for anyone to review or possibly download like a print and play version?
Well, I actually have this cyber card game available in my master thesis.
Oh, I
And
see.
I also have some PowerPoint
Hmm.
slides where all the game components are available for someone to print out. So I could make this available on
Hmm.
a Google Drive, and I think it's currently in my Dropbox.
Okay. Well, if that's something that you're willing to share, I'd be happy to post it in the show notes if you'd like.
Yeah, that's no
Excellent.
problem at all.
All right. So that brings us to our outro. So, Thorsten, thank you very much for joining us today. I appreciate you sharing all of your insights, your background, and your experience. Where can people go to find out more about you if they'd like to get in touch?
I must confess, I'm most heavily engaged on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I have a YouTube channel which is not very populated,
Hmm.
but I have a presentation on my gamification of strategic thinking,
Hmm.
a seminar there. That was actually the presentation I also gave in one of your um, conferences, the
Oh, yes.
virtual serious game conference
Yeah.
we did 2 years ago.
Hmm. All right. Well, thank you, Thorsten. I appreciate that. I'll make sure that I share out those links in the episode description and show notes. Thanks again for joining us. I appreciate it.
Dave, thank you very much for having me.
I hope you found this episode useful. If you'd like to learn more, then a great place to start is with my free course on gamification. You can sign up for it at universityxp.com/gamification. You can also get a full transcript of this episode, including links to references in the description or show notes. Thanks for joining us. Again, I'm your host, Dave Eng from GameSpace Learning by University XP. On Experience Points, we explore different ways we can learn from games. If you like this episode, please consider commenting, sharing, and subscribing. Subscribing is absolutely free and ensures that you'll get the next episode of Experience Points delivered directly to you. I'd also love it if you took some time to rate the show. We live to lift others with learning. So if you found this episode useful, consider sharing it with someone who could also benefit. Also, make sure to visit University XP online at universityxp.com. University XP is also on Twitter at university_XP, also known as X, and on Facebook and LinkedIn as University XP. Also, feel free to email me anytime. My email address is dave at universityxp.com. Game on.